What's going on, everybody? My name is Mark. You're watching The Big Critique. I'm here with my friend Michael Rockman.
Hello.
What's going on? So, Mike, what's new in life?
Man, I just recently had a kid, and
Let's cheers. Let's cheers.
Cheers to that, brother. All right.
All right.
And I also just switched over firms to Compass, one of the nation's top 3 brokerages. And we have about 40% inventory for Manhattan that's being sold. Excuse me, for New York.
Let's give some context. What is Compass for those people who aren't in the industry?
Yeah, so Compass is a brokerage. It's a national brokerage, real estate. We do residential, commercial, investments, renting, everything you guys could possibly want. So if you're looking to rent, buy, sell, invest, give me a shout.
So you're a
shameless plug.
You got it. So you're a real estate agent or broker?
I'm a real estate salesperson.
Oh, okay.
So
how does it work?
An agent. So there's a broker above me, and the brokerage Compass holds my license. And so I have a sales director that I report to. Okay. Technically, I'm an independent agent. I come at my own will. But I house my license with Compass. And in the next couple of months, my goal is to have my broker's license. And so that'll make me an associate broker.
Yeah.
Unless I try to open up my own firm, and then I become a broker.
Okay.
So that's the hierarchy. Broker, salesperson, and that's it.
So I guess the salesperson is like the same thing as the sales agent?
Yeah, that's just
a different terminology for it.
Exactly.
So like, essentially when you're a broker, that means that you have all your little minions running around making sales for you and you get a cut, right?
Yeah, it depends on how you're running your business. There's a lot of small brokerages, right? So it's just a broker and maybe 1 or 2 assistants. And so they're the ones that are doing the primary leg lifting. Those are usually either just starting, or they end up being folks that are retired or like in their late 50s, 60s, and so forth, who are doing this on the side and just don't want to split their income with anybody else.
Which you could blame them. Some people are like, yeah.
If you have a network, then that's where it becomes really useful. If your network, the way I see it is, especially for myself, I'm 4th year in the business, right? And so my network isn't huge. And so for me, it makes sense to work under a large brokerage that does have the reach. And so there is internal communication where if I have, let's say you're looking to invest in Florida, I can connect you with somebody great who is already part of the brokerage, who has trusted referrals within our company. And again, this is a well-established firm, so this isn't just agents off the street willy-nilly. You'll be able to be in good hands as we transfer you down to Florida. All right? And vice versa. If someone's coming to New York and saying, hey, my brother needs to buy or sell something in Brooklyn, who can help? Hey, Mike comes in as the referring agent and gets connected.
That's awesome. So I'm actually a little curious. Do you ever like go to meetups or whatever and stuff like that in the city just to try to network, like knowing you're most likely not going to make a sale there, but like just spreading your name out there and spreading the word on yourself?
So my first year in real estate, I really did actively go out to so first of all, my first year in real estate, I focused a lot on rentals, residential rentals. And in those, it was really important for me to really learn the inventory. So I went to every luxury building opening, any luxury building, they had meet and greets or just get to know the properties. Went ahead and went to non-doorman buildings, so your standard elevator walk-up properties, grabbed keys from the management just to understand the inventory, so that I could then be a better agent to the clients that I begin to meet. So at those moments, it was about getting my name out. Obviously, that's still the game. In fact, in the next couple of weeks, it's part of the reason why I'm really excited about Compass is because they have their own, they have a really strong marketing department. And so I have a marketing advisor that's hooked up with me specifically, who I'm going to be talking with actually tomorrow for the first time. This is day 6 for me with Compass.
Oh.
So we're going to be creating a plan.
Fresh meat in there, huh?
Exactly. Figuring out what does Rockman look like at Compass and how do we push him out in the most profitable way.
Can I ask you why you left your last firm?
Yeah, the last firm was a fantastic brokerage. They taught me an insane amount.
Would you recommend them to somebody first starting out?
100%. In fact, I would strongly encourage people to. I was at Caliber.
That was the name of it? Caliber?
Yeah. Caliber Associates. Then they rebranded. They're just Caliber now.
And where are they located? In New York City?
They are on West 45th Street in Midtown.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good to know.
fantastic brokerage. Shai Gruber, Levy, the two main principal owners, and they're phenomenal. I learned an incredible amount from them, and
It's great. It's very important to have good mentors.
oh,
Very important.
in this business above any other, man. This is a type of business where, and statistically, I believe it's something like 70-80% of agents drop out by the 6th or 7th month, and then another 20 or so by the end, before the end of 12 months. So the dropout rate is incredibly high, although every other week there's about 500 to 600 agents being pumped out, new licenses.
So the way I've started to look at everything in life, and this is probably when really only happened once I met my now fiance, because
it's a nice lady.
thanks, very nice lady. Yeah, you met her first, so you would know. So I kind of had one understanding of the world, and then we met, and she kind of very slowly helped to show me a different understanding. And
Solid.
I mean, like, it goes in accordance with all these, like, you know, like motivational and like inspirational entrepreneurs like Gary Vaynerchuk and Tony Robbins or whatever, but it's more so like what I have taken from everything she's shown me from her world is you have to play life like a video game. Now, me personally, when I play video games, I fucking suck at first. I am horrible at first. But the more I try and sit there and progress, I level up and level up and level up. And so far in life, since meeting her, I've started to really like kind of push that ideology out, and it can be applicable to anything. So I think, and I've worked in the sales world before, and I too have tried something and failed and gave up because I didn't have the right push or the right ideologies behind me. So I think that, and this is really applicable to any salesman anywhere, really anybody in any profession, it's you're gonna fucking suck at first. Where I'm still in the infancy of shooting podcasts, I'm still figuring this shit out. It's gonna suck for a little while, just don't give a fucking shit. That's just how I roll, right? I really don't care at all. Because people will still watch. You guys, I'm sure, can find some value in the conversations that we're having right now. Which is why Mike's
a little bit, as much as you can.
A little bit, right? But what I think is important to note is, if I had to assume the salesmen that stuck in these positions would be the ones that grinded and took the failures and just kept pushing until finally doors opened up, probably months or a year later, and then shit started to work out for them. Would that be a fair assumption to make?
So yes and no. So there's a couple of things that come into play, right? I've had I would say a great benefit of being able to, I started out as an independent agent. I was working under Shai Gruber directly. He was teaching me what he knew, and my personality is such where if I needed something, I went to him directly and just demanded it, right? I wouldn't take no for an answer. Because I also left a 9-to-5 job, steady income, which is all I've ever had since like 17, 18 years old, as soon as I started working really fully, right? Aside from like little bullshit jobs here and there.
Sure, yeah, I get it.
So when you have that change in mentality, you really need to hold yourself accountable. So that's number one. You can grind as hard as you want, but if you're not consistent in that, it's useless. You can go hard for 3 days and then zone out for 2-3 days after that. All that work you just did is for nothing.
It's like negated almost.
I would say more so than any other business, and the reason why is I just secured, let's say, Monday, Tuesday, I got a bunch of leads. I took them out. I took 5-6 people out Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, I'm feeling the lower energy, but I still went out and resaw some of these clients. By Thursday, I'm already feeling it. I'm slowing down. Friday, I decide, you know what, I'm not seeing anybody. Well, guess what? The people who didn't close, which 99% of the time they won't be closing your first appointment or even your second appointment.
Yeah.
So they're going to go ahead. Now they're hype, and Mike isn't available on Friday. Who they're going to call? Any other thousands of agents in the city.
He's gonna say the Ghostbusters, but
they're gone, right?
Yeah.
They're gone, and why are they gone? Because you weren't there to lock in the deal. And so if a lot of agents get into the mentality of like, I'm just gonna keep burning, and then they burn out. So being consistent, but also having the foresight to know that, okay, I do need at least a day or something like that.
in between.
That's a structured break, right? It's not just zone everybody out. So when I started running independently, those are the things that I learned for myself and got feedback fairly quickly to upgrade and change. When I started training agent, which was really cool, so I started the Rockman Group, and I had about 6 agents.
It sounds good. Muzzle to you.
That's good, right?
The Rockman Group. It sounds like you're gonna be something one day, if not already.
Well, why not, right? At least the branding is sounding nice.
Mm-hmm.
So as I started training agents, it became very evident to me, and you know me well enough where I'm gonna be very upfront with the person, and I'm not gonna oversell them if I really don't think it's gonna be the best move for them.
Which is the right way to be in sales. If you're a salesman or like an aspiring salesman, you want to be direct but transparent and almost like to the point of an educator, because if you're like not transparent, if you're trying to fuck somebody where they don't need to be sold, it's just going to backfire on you. So not a good idea. What he's saying is the perfect way to make the sale.
100%. So that transparency, I was able to get agents who, and this goes across a wide variety of situations, right? So I've had single moms come into the business who join up on the team and they go, okay, I need to start making payroll I have like 2 months of reserve and then I really need money coming in. And one of the first conversations I had with them was like, okay, look, realistically, you can close a deal tomorrow and it could be for $3,000. Your cut is at the moment 50-50, so you're getting $1,500 at the end of the day. You're collecting a no fee. That means the owner's gonna pay you. The owner's gonna pay you maybe a month. Usually within 3 months, you're gonna get this money. So even if you close tomorrow, which is very rare, it takes at least 1 to 2 weeks to close on a client, you're potentially gonna see that money only up to 3 months from now. Depending on the brokerage, you could maybe take an advance. Most brokerages give you 1 or 2 advances a month. So again, how much of a situation, like what is your safety net within this business? And that's going to be the second element that's going to help you survive or determine how long you can survive in this business, aka also thrive after a certain point, because your first couple of months will definitely suck. You might have beginner's luck and shut down like 3, 6, 10 deals in a row. I had a colleague at Caliber who closed 6 or 10, I think, maybe 10 even deals, almost immediately within the first 3 months. The next 3 months after that went dry. All right? So every day you wake up in this business, there's no guarantee of a paycheck. How much of a safety net do you have? It's going to help you determine how far you can, how long you can last in this business.
And based on my experience in sales, and then the sales experience that I personally have, it was never real estate. I did credit card processing like 10 years ago or something like that. I was a lot younger. If I had the mindset then that I have now, I probably would have been very successful at it. But nonetheless, what I realized as a salesman in retrospect is, it's like primal shit. It's almost like the jungle out. No, but it kind of is though, because it's like if you go into a sale and you're hot and you're desperate, like really desperate because you really need to put food on the table, there's a really high likelihood they're not gonna buy. Like people can smell desperation and they don't like it, and they will walk away because I guess I don't really understand the psychology fully myself. I just know that it doesn't work. So if you're gonna go into real estate, from everything that I understand from that sort of sales, and that's the sort of sales that you do, is pretty much like you have your own business and your broker is the wholesaler. And so you don't get a $500 or $600 like salary at the end of the week. You get what you could get a $5,000 check at the end of the week. It just depends on the deals that you close.
Right.
And so I think it's really important to know for anybody first starting out that that's the case. That you always want to have a backbone. Essentially, what Mike here is saying, I think the best thing to do, even if you have to get a job at fucking Starbucks or McDonald's or any of those things, if you really want to get into real estate, you're in a tight spot, you do that just so you have some form of fucking income coming in. You eat the shit for a little while. Or drive an Uber. Driving an Uber may be a better idea because you can probably control your hours a lot better in reality.
You
but
can work nights. You can work the times where your clients don't want to see, right? So you have to keep your main client in mind. Your main client is the apartment seekers if you're doing residential rentals. Right? And those guys are going to want to see usually mornings through the afternoon and sometime evenings, right? But you can count on the working hours Monday through Friday generally being less about showing and more about gathering keys, getting ready for the showing that typically begins to kick in around 4 to as late as 9, 10 o'clock at night. So after 10, you can hop into that Uber and continue driving around, get a little bit of an income. Or in the early mornings or during the afternoon, you just have to keep in mind who you're targeting and what your clientele wants from you, your main clientele. To your point though, I joke around with my agents. I tell them, don't drop your pants too fast.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Right? You don't want to lay all your cards out on the table too quickly with any client, whether you're pitching for a sale, whether you're pitching to close on a rental, or just yourself and trying to convince a client, hey, work with me as your buyer's agent, as your rental agent, as your seller's agent. You don't. It's like that Simpsons character, that desperate salesman who's always like, I'll throw in the whole house, I'll give you everything, just buy this, buy this. If you don't value yourself, no one's gonna value.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think that might be what it boils down to on like a primal level, because what I've seen is if you're a desperate salesperson, then you don't possess a ton of confidence. And that's what people need to buy. They need to know that they're buying from someone who has a shit ton of confidence, because even if you haven't been successful in the past, if you exude confidence, they'll have faith that they're putting the money in the right space.
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of what it boils down to. But so now I'm gonna take us to a different sort of a conversation within the one we're having right now. So how good have you gotten in the past few months of juggling your time? Because you have a brand new person in your life.
Oh yeah, little baby girl.
How old is she?
She just turned 8 months.
8 months?
December 22nd she was born.
We'll do another little climb to that.
Yeah, amen. Baby Catherine.
Baby Catherine, cheers to you. All the best.
Success, Catherine.
So, what I have found funny lately is for a few people that I know that have a kid on the way or just had newborns, at first it's congratulations. At first it's congratulations, but like the reality of the conversation is, so your life's gonna be miserable for like the next year or so, huh? How do you feel about that? And I think it's hilarious that that's the case, because it's like the case in almost every single situation that I've seen recently, and I just have to wonder if it's just like that now with our generation, or our parents' generation did the same shit. I feel like it's just ours, but I could be wrong.
Dude, our parents' generation had, our parents, I should say, former Soviet Union, right? That's the background
that's yours.
I'm coming from, right?
Yeah.
For myself, you're here, American. You could maybe speak a little different to it, but I would say going back 2 gens, for sure, both of our sides didn't have diapers.
Definitely not.
I mean? So they had. My mom was telling me, and my grandma was saying the same thing. They had dozens and dozens of rags, just cloth, okay, shy of just something a little thicker than your scarf, okay, as the diaper. And so every day, my kid goes through at least 6 to 7 diapers a day in the beginning. You'll just pee.
Oh man.
And I was the type of parent who was just like, oh, it's wet, blue line, I'm gonna change it out. By the way, if you're not sure what the blue line is, when the diaper comes on, it has a nice yellow streak. That means it's dry.
Blue line
when they pee, it's a blue line. That means it's wet. Potentially time for a change. Things I never knew. By the way, that blue line thing, my wife knew about it from day 1. When did she tell me about it? Month 3. Meanwhile, this entire time, I'm like, nope, doesn't smell right.
Not gonna name drop right now, but good job, Mike's wife.
Amy.
I can say I wasn't sure.
It's okay.
Good job, Amy. Good work.
Yeah.
No, listen, you guys are both fucking exhausted. I'm sure that
it's tiresome, but so to your point about sleep, in the very beginning, well, first of all, every child is different, and as cliche as that sounds,
it's true.
It's incredibly true.
Yeah.
You can read, and we read through a whole bunch of books, and we're like, okay, not so bad. She's gonna sleep X number of hours during the afternoon, during the evening, during the morning, and then throughout the night, eventually she'll be able to sleep throughout the whole night. It's month 8, and she's still sleeping in our bed, and that's the reality. A lot of parents have this shame of admitting that. I don't. Because that's just
I love that, man.
That's just what my kid wants. That's what my kid needs, I should say, because the want right now is a little difficult to truly determine. But from what my wife and I are able to do, that is what we feel is the best thing right now for a child. And reason to it, from earlier age, my mom's a pediatrician. We have a nanny, a Georgian nanny. This woman is tough as rocks, but incredibly loving to the child. She has 3 of her own kids.
Right.
Our pediatrician, our own private pediatrician, said the same thing. Yeah, your kid does not sleep at all. Okay?
Yours doesn't?
A regular child should be sleeping, should be taking naps for an hour up to 2 hours, maybe 3 hours
That's very
at a time. They should also be able to. I had a showing shortly after my kid was born, where the kid, the buyers I was representing, they brought their child, was 2 months old. 2 months old child. They brought him to the showing, walked around into this beautiful 4-bedroom apartment, walking room to room, and this child just kept sleeping in the crib, in the couch that they were carrying around. My child, I keep at home because I know the second I take them out, she's crying.
Oh, it's like
the first
that?
couple of months in the carriage, she hated it. She would just start screaming left and right.
Yeah.
So am I sleeping? Short answer, no.
Not so much.
Not so much, but as the months go on, it does become bearable, and it becomes a lot more functional. You really begin to understand how you can take your shifts. Like last night, my wife was joking. In the morning, she tells me, did you leave somewhere in the middle of the night? I'm like, yeah, I got tired of getting woken up every 30 minutes. I had an important meeting this morning, so I basically, in the middle of the night, got up and slept on the couch.
That was it. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
There's nothing you could really do.
That was it. My wife handled the moments. Everything was fine, but the kid was just waking up every 30 minutes or so after 2 o'clock, and she just needed. And literally, when she wakes up, she just needs a little hug and crawl back to sleep.
So I mean, like for us, when it comes time to do this, I've always, since I've known Yana, I've been a little nervous. Like since I've known her and we've like gotten to the conversation of having kids, I've been a little nervous because this is the way that it is. I'm good on like 5 to 6 hours of sleep. If I need to do 4, I can do 4. It's not like favorable, but I can make it happen. If I need to do 3, I can do it. Not gonna love it, but it is what it is. Her, she's exhausted still after 8 hours. What the fuck? I hope she watches this one. She's gonna laugh. Because it's true though. Like the only time I get from since we got a dog, which he's not here right now because
Where's the Poochie?
So he gets loud and he interrupts like the bench or whatever. So he's staying with grandma right now.
Okay.
She's 5 minutes away, and I love my mother. She's the best. She's happy to have him. But anyway, but like I've talked to her about this before. I'm just like, if we have a kid and like he doesn't or she doesn't sleep through the night, I feel like I'm gonna be the one because like I don't even know if she's gonna wake up. But maybe it's different when you actually have it.
So first of all, a good mother is priceless. Like that's not even a word. There's no word for how important a great mother.
That's very
or
true.
even the most minimal mother is phenomenal for a child, in my opinion, right? And the reason I say this is when my kid was born, the amount of love that comes out, man, it's undescribable.
Really?
It's just. I can't say it. Like
you don't need to.
Like that's all it is. You know what I mean? It's just that kind of feeling.
This.
But what's really powerful is seeing my wife's reaction to the baby, right? And everybody has their own different fears and concerns. There's some depression that's a very real thing, both for the new father and the mother. Okay.
I wonder why that is. I don't disregard it. I believe it's true 100%.
It definitely is. There's levels of it. There was a moment for myself where a couple of weeks I was just like, man, it's just A, overwhelming, B, you want to do the best possible for this kid because it's no longer about you, right?
And that's why we haven't embarked on this journey because we're not ready to be that selfless yet.
This. And you'll see that in a typical situation, that selflessness comes naturally. Right, you will adjust, but you'll want to pour it out, and the selfishness in the sentence that you just said, which is totally fine.
Right? No, I know.
It exists there up until the moment the kid comes out, and once it does, it disappears so quickly, and you want it to disappear. Like it'll happen intentionally. It
comes down to a very primal thing.
And what comes out of it is something more rewarding than any vacation I've ever took on my own, any party I've been at. It's just phenomenal.
And I know that what you're saying is 100% a thing that's completely indescribable, which is why I wasn't like trying to ask you to go into it. Just because of the amount of times I've heard different people say the exact same thing about having kids, because it's like from our perspective, we have the typical like worries like it's not so much about the money and we both have good jobs, we can support a family right now, at least like 3 of us if we had a kid. It's more so like, do we want to allocate time yet? Do we I don't know if we're done traveling yet. I don't know if we're just done doing the things we want to do, like this me and you sitting here right now.
Right.
This gets very time consuming.
Right.
And I know you want to start your own thing, and I really hope you do, and I would love to see you post stuff. I would be very, very interested, and kind of would want to see your time management skills are like, if you could pull up posting something consistently.
Right.
I'd really want to have a conversation with you, like, what's your secret?
I'll tell you what the secret would be is, if it is truly beneficial for my family, then it will get done.
That is very true. Yeah.
There is no bigger driver for me, and I would say for someone like yourself, and probably a lot of the people who are listening to this, is having a child that you're coming home to, and that child intentionally smiles at you. The reason why I say that specific moment for me was when I came home, the first couple of months or so, the child doesn't quite fully recognize you. Like, they see that it's a common face, but eventually as they get old enough, they intentionally begin to smile at you, right? So it's not just a reflex, it's a moment of, who is this? That's daddy. Or this person that keeps saying daddy. I'm familiar with him, he makes me laugh, and then boom, the smile comes. And then
like
you're like, done, that's it. You can have whatever you want, baby girl. Done.
And your wife's like, no, give her whatever she wants.
Exactly.
Not through the...
When you were saying, who's going to be the one waking up, And my wife and I had a different conversation about who's going to be the tough parent. I'm like, I'll definitely be firm because my wife's definitely mushy gushy and like, sweetie peaty.
Based on...
Flipped around.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm going to be the one who's just like, you can have whatever you want, and my wife is now in charge of like more of the heavy discipline.
You know what's funny? I learned this taking care of a dog.
For now.
I learned this taking care of a dog. Because me and Yana both have very practical, realistic ideologies when it comes to certain things that even some people may look at me for saying and be like, that's kind of grimy, because it's just things that people wouldn't want to talk about, or whatever, even to talk about life insurance policies and stuff.
Right.
Serious topics that really should be discussed, that a lot of people would be like, well, we don't want to talk about. That's a scary subject, that's about somebody dying.
Right.
But the conversations do need to get had. So we're both very practical like that. But when it came to taking care of the dog, I was the one that was more mushy. She would have to be she'd be the one to be like, we're not going to change his food. If he's hungry, he's going to eat. That's it. It's very simple. Right. And I'd be like, well, what if he can't, what if he's having trouble or whatever? She's like, if he's hungry, he's going to eat.
Find a way.
Yeah. And so he did. And then after a while, I started to follow to her lead, and I was just like, all right, I have to stop being so nervous that we're going to kill this little being. You're right. We don't need to coddle him, and that's kind of it. But I get what you're saying. One of you will kind of be strong when the other one, needs it.
It's where the healthy relationship comes in. Communication is key, whether it's personal or in the business, right? How you're communicating your thoughts is also really important. Not just going openly. Well, every relationship is different. Some people really take the blunt approach and they're cursing at each other, high level of volume. To an outsider, they're yelling at each other. Meanwhile, for them, that's just them talking. And you'll see that your relationship will keep reaching new heights. Because the pressure will increase and the moments of friction will be very different, usually higher. And so your ability to work through that friction and evolve it to something greater, that's what made me realize, when our parents are, when are you going to have those kids? When are you going to get married? And all this other stuff. I find myself saying the same thing to some of my friends who are single, who are saying what you just said, I don't know if I'm done traveling and things like that. Because for me now, the mentality is, I can't imagine traveling by myself and having as nearly as great of an experience if I was to travel with my kid, probably not just yet, but maybe in a couple of months, which is a year or so, to take her to a resort and have her touching just grass or seeing a different color ocean and having her smile regarding that experience. Man, to me, that's going to be 10 times better than me going out on my own on some surfing trip or whatever the case is. You know what you remind me of on a very, very juvenile level? You remind me of when we were really young. And I'm going to be 33 next month, and you're what? And you're... I'm already 33.
You're already... Oh.
Yeah. I'm 86. I was born in 86.
Oh, so am I. Okay. So you're like born a few months earlier than I am. So you remember when we were in like high school, or I don't know what age you started to party, but like I started to party towards the end of high school.
Yeah.
And so.
You're late bloomer.
Yeah, I really was. Dude, my voice didn't even change. My voice still hasn't changed, but that's okay. My voice didn't even change until I was like 19-ish. But so
there's a lot of audio mixing for this portion right now.
Yeah, you're gonna hear me sound like
from here to over here.
Yeah, I sound like a little chipmunk. So I'm gonna edit this, but I remember my friends being like, "Dude, you gotta try smoking a joint. Dude, you gotta have a drink. You don't like getting drunk is the shit."
Right.
And like, you know, me and the other like sort of dorks were still on the handball courts, and we're like sort of straight and narrow kids. We'd be like, yeah, sure, whatever. But like, it seems like when you get to your 30s, people are like, dude, this fucking thing called procreating, you guys gotta fucking try it. You gotta have a fucking kid. You gotta do it.
That's a great example, man. And yes, it's definitely a dangerous drug to try.
It's the fucking most expensive. It's the most addictive.
And the consequences are real. There's literally a life on the line.
Yeah, oh yeah. You want to have your drugs and heroin? Have a fucking kid.
It's, again, as cliche as it is, it really is life-changing. But it's one thing that I did that a lot of folks, well, I don't know, I don't want to say a lot, but a lot of people in the real estate business, during the time that my wife and I were pregnant, and having the baby, there was other agents and actually $1 million listing guys all happened to have had their kid in the same year.
Oh,
and so
it's convenient.
And there was one guy in particular who was very early on. Won't call him out, but he's a great agent. But what I didn't like is they capitalized on, not every one of them, but the vast majority of them capitalized on that moment for their business. They put it out onto their social media, they put it out there to share it. And as much as they put in the lines of just sharing my joy with you, hashtag call me, you know, you know what I mean?
Call me maybe.
You know, it was like, come on, the kid's literally being born. One of the guys was actually live streaming as this thing is happening. It's just like, dude, your kid literally still has placenta on
That's a really personal moment.
Like, come on, man. And he comes off at this like, this is part of my shtick. I'm being authentic with you. For me, there are moments that need to stay private, and it's the same with my clients. Like, yes, we get really intimate, and yes, we get into, like, I literally walk into their homes and I'm trying to position their sale or I'm trying to help them purchase. But at the same time, there is a level of separation of, hey, this is my private life and this is your private life, and yeah, we'll mix and match, but it could stay between us. It doesn't have to be put out into the rest of the world.
What I think that a lot of people that are like run rampant, I'd say it through social media. What I think a lot of people mistake is showing those special moments and thinking that it's gonna blow them up, and it might for like a night or so.
Right.
Versus just, you don't even have to pick a crazy specific niche, you know, like I'm doing like these sort of like career-based entrepreneurial interviews or whatever with people. I'm sure there's somebody else out there doing it. My hope is that I just do it with enough consistency that I get to grab some market share.
Right.
It's probably not going to be that mind-blowing. Again, we hope we offer you value. I hope with all of my guests, different levels of value come. But I think that people definitely misunderstand blowing themselves up on social via showing the most ridiculous things and turning their life into like a reality show versus just building a business the right way.
Right, exactly. I was having this legitimate conversation with my wife where how much of my life do I want to put out there? And how authentic do I want to be? And obviously you want to be as authentic as possible, but at the same time, if I'm being authentic with my viewer and trying to live stream a moment of the kid being born or me and my family, you know, out on a picnic or something like that, that means at that moment I am taking myself away from my family.
Correct.
Onto a video.
You're working. That's work.
And then I'm putting this in, and that is a mind shift, right? And so I can see my child right now at 8 months, and even before, I think by like month 3 or so, she began to reach for things and really grab things. And my phone is a pretty heavy phone. Right now at 8 months, she's able to hold this thing in one hand, and she knows that this is a special tool.
Yeah.
Why? Because even now in our private moments, I still have this phone somewhat in her face. It's like, smile, baby, for grandma, you know?
Yeah.
But now I'm taking this out, and I'm recording myself, her, and whatever moment I want to make online. To me, it's inauthentic to my family, right? I can
It's
position...
like a violation of privacy, so that's what I say.
Right.
Yeah.
And as much as someone can twist it and say, well, no, I'm sharing my viewers, you have to really, I don't know, it's a different mindset that you have to position yourself for. It's not something for me. It's tough for me to watch people do that as well. Like I usually end up skipping by those, any of those kind of stories, or if it's a podcast about it or a video cast about it, I end up skipping through and just going to the business side of things.
You know, I have to tell you, I've known you for maybe right around 3 years now, and I've always known you to be a salesman. And you're a salesman, like through and through. I guess I never really thought about the level of marketing salesman you'd be. And I guess I just never even thought of how you would react with a kid. But to be honest with you, the second you didn't plaster everything on like Facebook,
Right.
like so I found out you were having a kid before you put it on Facebook,
Right.
Because you still talk to my fiance, and I guess on a somewhat consistent basis.
Yeah.
And so she was like, what?
For like landmark moments.
Yeah, I like fucking. I think we're in Paris or something. She was like, "Oh, Rockman's having a kid," and I was like, "He didn't put anything on Facebook." And she was like, "I don't think he's going to yet." And I was like, "You know, that's really respectable." Like, listen, we know each other. I don't know you that well,
right?
But that did teach me, like, all right. So as much as he's a salesman and he's gonna market himself and he's gonna, you know, do what he needs to do to grab the market share he wants to grab, he's still a fucking human being. He's still gonna like keep private moments very fucking personal.
Right, exactly. It's important for me, it's important for my wife, it's important for how I want to raise my child. Yes, social media is out there, and yes, it plays a huge role, and just in general, the world of everything, like everything is connected. But at the same time, basic personal interaction, I value that the most in my family and in my business. And so I want my daughter to know that father is present, mother is present,
it's really
at
important.
the dinner table present, right? And are there moments of I need to take a phone call? Sure, but it is a moment that becomes identified very clearly. Okay, I'm taking the phone, I'm moving away, I'm hopping on the phone. Not just for lack of distraction, but to make it a point where I need to take a time out for a second, take care of business, now I'm back with you, right? That I think is the same, I don't know, that to me is a value when I'm talking to my child.
Yeah. So let's circle back to the fact that you're a real estate agent for a second. I know a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions on this, including myself. So, as anybody who lives in New York City knows, it's fucking expensive to live here.
Yeah.
It's very fucking expensive to live here, and people, you know, I don't want to make a generalization that people are leaving New York in massive bunches or whatever, and at like the highest rate possible, because that's a large claim to make.
Don't believe the hype.
Don't believe the propaganda on that, right? But what I do want to address, because I have, at least in the network of people that I know on social media, on Facebook, I probably have 600 or 700 friends, and like I'm seeing people move to Florida, move to Colorado, move to Cali, just like out of the New York City area. So I know that the work that you do is kind of secularized towards Manhattan.
I focus in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens.
Okay.
Staten Island I can do, but I'd rather refer out to another agent.
Okay.
Long Island, same thing. Bronx, same thing.
So now let me ask you this, because it might not be the same for every borough. Do you think that we still have a ways to go as far as rent prices? Do you think those are still going to go up, or do you see a ceiling and it's gonna start to deflate soon?
Ceiling. So as long as the city's growing, which so far New York is, even though there's been, I don't want to call it a decline, but it's they're definitely, millionaires are leaving, billionaires are leaving.
Why do you think that is?
Taxes.
Too high.
Too high. As much as we want to say tax the rich, and I'm all for it. I'm in the same price point as the majority of you guys. You have to balance it out, where these people got rich, and a lot of them are great people. A lot of them are my buyers, you know, or my sellers. These are hardworking individuals who have their own families and who generation after generation have done their best to save and provide for the next. And a lot of them are still very humble, extremely humble people. But at the same time, when they go in and they say, well, if I'm making an income in New York and 40% of it is taxed, or 50% of it is taxed, 60% of it is taxed, at some point they say, do I really need to live in New York?
Not at all, no.
I can literally go next door to Jersey. I don't even need to go that far out to Florida. But why not go to Florida? Much cheaper.
So I wanna give a different perspective on that. Disclaimer, I am far from fucking rich. I make a salary just like everybody else. I just have an ability to see from different perspectives. I've met a few wealthy people, much like yourself. You know, when you live in New York and you're in the professional world, you'll probably end up meeting somebody who makes $500,000 or $1 million a year. It's a possibility. Not that I've spoken to anybody about this, but anyway, to the point. As far as I understand about anybody who's ever built real wealth, so 500,000, $1 million, $2 million a year, etc. These are people, the reason that they were able to build that level of wealth is because they worked 10 times harder, a large portion of the time, than the people like me and you. Not to say that we don't work hard.
Oh, absolutely.
But we don't, I know that I am probably not working as hard consistently, because this takes consistent effort of not just what, like today and tomorrow, me and Mike are gonna work 15-hour days, and the next 2 days we're gonna work 8 or 9 hours. It doesn't work like that. Most people who are wealthy or millionaires tend to not really have relationships and not really see their friends, and just like their business is their life. That's how, again, from what I've seen, maybe everybody has different experiences. That's how they're able to create such levels of wealth, because they literally put every ounce of their being for not days, not weeks, not months, but like years at a time into this shit. And so for you to say, oh, fuck, I'm taxed the rich, I then put myself into that position. Well, if I fucking grinded, if I've literally let everything else go, a love life, my family, my friends, and you're gonna tell me, tax me, go fuck yourself. You try doing that. Like, you have to, I think that you have to either A, have a level of hunger in you that's rather rare, and you do, to be a 1%er. There's a reason
why you're a 1%.
1%er, right. It's not very common at all. You know, to be at that level, you have to be willing to work the 100-hour work weeks, and then for people to hate on you for it. I love the fact, I think it's ridiculous that we're hating on the American dream. And nobody wants to talk about how much money they make, because they're getting embarrassed. I've literally heard somebody say within the last year or so, I'm embarrassed to say how much money I made this year. I'm embarrassed to say how much I made up on the sale of my house. Why? We're in a country where that should be the goal, because you can do it here.
Right. It's a healthy balance of capitalism. I'll say this, I think there is a huge difference between when the media or the public puts out there and says tax the rich. I think companies like, let's say Johnson & Johnson, for example, they just got fined. The news broke today where they're going to be paying back certain millions of dollars because they contributed to the opioid epidemic.
Okay.
I didn't read the details of it, but we could fact check it, or as the news will roll out, it'll be more of it. But a company like that, for example, that involved intentional knowledge of, hey, we are aware of something that's causing a negative reaction to the community, and we're still finding ways to profit on it, kind of sucks. And so in those moments, if you were aware of the damage and you still continue to sell it, you should pay a penalty.
Absolutely, then yes.
When you look at, on the flip side, right? So that's like when you're doing something borderline criminal, if not literally criminal. Then you look at a company like Amazon, right?
Yeah.
A multi-billion, trillion-dollar company, right? The man himself was able to have a divorce and left his wife a billionaire, and he's still #1 richest person in the world, right? So and they're paying zero taxes or very little in taxes because they're writing off losses. Things like that.
Now we all know who we have to sleep with to be a billionaire or billionaire. Just
get Jeff Bezos on the line.
Find out what his type is and get up in there.
So, and the man started the company from books, right? So and when you look at his personal life, it's like what you just said. He did sacrifice quite a lot. Right? He was not the best possible husband, thus the situation, right? She tolerated, but at the same time, he seems to have been an okay father. When you look at the Apple guy, what's his name?
Steve Jobs.
So when you look at Steve Jobs, he also, there was at least some of the literature that I read on him, he was a pretty stern husband, a pretty stern person in general, as like a friend with his family and so forth. So, but a brilliant businessman, right, and a brilliant innovator. And so there's a sacrifice definitely that occurs, but at the same time, we can't allow a company to have such insane growth without contributing back to the society that is allowing them to have this growth.
That's true, but I don't want to be too punny here, but didn't jobs create millions of jobs?
100%, but how many more could he have created if we were able to tax them even a point higher, right? It's not like the company would shut down or not open up their plant. Amazon moving to Long Island City, right? Did we have to shell out all that extra money? No. All the benefits, when I say shell out, let's make a distinction. They were getting a tax break. We weren't paying them to come, right?
Yeah.
Could we have reduced the benefits? Absolutely. Did we have to go out like AOC, and not to get too political, God forbid I offend anybody.
No.
Did our politicians have to go out there and say, you're scum and our city needs to stop giving them breaks and all this stuff? No, we didn't have to be that rude. We could have renegotiated, used our leverage and say, yes, still come, but maybe we'll give you $1 billion less or $3 billion less or whatever the numbers are, but still come, because Long Island City would have thrived so much. And real estate agents will say it's still going up, and it is. Is it going up at the same exponential growth as we were expecting if Amazon's to come?
Probably not.
Absolutely
There's
not.
no way.
It just isn't.
No.
Is Amazon still coming to New York? Yes, in different capacities. They're going to be, if not already, they're looking for a large commercial property to lease in Manhattan, right? So are we getting the potential benefit? Yes. Is it the same? No, because it's not like they're building a town, which is what they wanted to do in Long Island City.
Right.
Long story short is we have to find a proper balance in how much do you tax a company, how much do you tax an individual, so that it motivates them to stay. Because a lot of my clients, I work with a decent number of buyers who want to buy an Upper East Side, Park Avenue, Madison Avenue, right by Central Park, right? You want to buy there because of the prestige it brings you.
100%.
It goes back to old New York of, hey, we're moving up on Park Ave, right? That's where my personal dream is, right? To end up on the Upper East Side for the prestige, for the school zones, for the general community, the vibe, everything that goes with it. I love it. Not the cockiness of it, but they really are an insanely great amount of good people out there who work hard and enjoy a relatively luxurious lifestyle, right? But when I talk to these guys and their motivation to move begins to slowly diminish because they're feeling like, is it worth it for me to buy here, or should I go somewhere else? You know, should I move to a different borough? Should I move to a different state altogether?
Also, my question for them, because I think over everything, listen, I'm just as ambitious as the next guy. I'm just as ambitious, I'd like to think, as you and some probably other people in the circles you're referring to. My question is though, are those people happy? Like, 'cause I know people get used to a luxurious life, but are they happy doing what they do?
Right. Well, that's where it comes down to, like, when I the first part of this was, you know, an experience of me as an individual alone going on a vacation versus me going on vacation with my family.
Right.
And to me, the level of happiness going with my family is so much higher than me going by myself.
I mean, I would imagine.
So in the work-life balance, it becomes even more important, right? How much of my presence do I want to sacrifice, or lack of presence, for my business versus my family? And I am thankful that, I mean, God bless, knock on wood, that I'm able to work enough hours that there is a steady income coming in, and at the same time, if there's an emergency, I could not show that day, I could not work that day and spend the time with my kid because the nanny's sick or for whatever reason I need to take care of it.
Right.
When the wedding was coming up, I spent a lot of times at home because of the luxury of the job. I was able to do a lot of the planning just on my own.
That's fantastic.
And give up the time from the clients because it just didn't, like, I made my money earlier in the month, I'm good for the rest of the month. Is it always like that? Absolutely not.
No.
Same thing when the kid was born. I was able to take off for about 2 months as a conscious decision to say, you know what, I'm tired of chasing these random clients because I was in the middle of, and this is, again, a decision to walk away from some money. When my kid was about to be born, it was like the week of the due date, and there was an active buyer, and we were putting in offers, and we had a contract out. And everything looks great. I went ahead and went to the city several times. Days before we're supposed to show up to the clinic, to the hospital to have the induction. And it looks like the deal's going to go through. The kid is born. It's now the following new year. It's in January 1 or 2. All of a sudden, my buyer is pulling out. And at that moment, I said to the buyer, you know what, that's okay. You know, we left on good terms. But I consciously said, I am not going to be following up. Because my priority is right here, right now.
Yeah.
I'd rather lose this client, maybe indefinitely, maybe not.
There'll be others.
Exactly, but I'd rather not lose the moments that I believe are essential for me right here.
Yeah.
And because I did that true to myself, true to my family and what we're building, as soon as I was done with my 2 months or so, I came back into the business 100 times more ready.
I mean, you had that level
trying
of
to be
like
50-50 here and
you
there.
had that level of like from my perspective, you have like a different level of like value and respect for yourself. Like, you're not gonna dictate my life. No, I'm choosing my family right now. The real estate will still be there when I get back.
Right. It was nerve-wracking. Like, it's not like I have hundreds of thousands of dollars in reserve. Like, that's not my safety net, right? It definitely isn't. But it was what I needed for my mental safety net.
Yeah.
You know, that I need to take care of this. I need to make sure that everything is the way that I need it to be to feel comfortable. And as soon as I'm ready to go back out, I'm going to be giving 100% when I'm out there. And once I'm home, and I'm giving 100% to home.
So here's something that I don't know if we actually addressed. You said, so when I asked you about rents in New York City and the rich were leaving, so you think that at least in Manhattan, there's still going.
A certain level of rich is leaving.
A certain level of rich is leaving. So that means that rents can expect to go down a little bit?
So no. So right now, to put any worries aside, there's only one trigger for a potential recession. Only one.
What's that?
So,
does his name start with a T?
well, that's...
And end with a PP.
That's more of a, I guess, image situation versus like actual numerical situation.
Right.
But
a lot of people think that, but it may not be the case.
So I believe there's supposed to be 3 identifiers, and the names aren't coming to me as to what they are.
Are they like within the bond and the stock market?
It's some of that. There is, I believe, also general like prices of real estate and as well as loans that are being paid out, as well as right now credit card, personal debt is a big deal right now. Not mortgages, but personal debt. We're on track of busting that bubble very soon. So in either case, very limited signs for a recession. Have we had a downslope? 100%.
Oh, the stock market's down quite a bit.
Stock is down. Real estate has been down about 12% or so over the last year or so.
Yeah, no, I'm down in my stock portfolio right now, but it's okay.
It's all right. I mean, it'll turn back up eventually. But it's a fantastic time to buy. Here's the problem. When it's a fantastic time to buy, and buyers are still holding out, that means it's a great time for landlords who are rental landlords. So okay, it's great for them because rental prices are continuing to go up. They haven't decreased; they've increased.
I'll tell you what I've heard. So you're referring right now, I assume, more so Manhattan.
No, New York.
New York. So
Period.
what I've heard is Staten Island, and I've heard this from other realtors. Some of which are in are in like both of our social networks, more than likely. But I've heard that Staten Island has a bunch of like unsold inventory. Maybe not rentals.
Yes.
Maybe not rentals.
You asked me about rentals. Unsold inventory has been.
Sorry, maybe
for sale inventory.
Yeah.
Has been staying on the market significantly longer. Borough to borough, anywhere between 20 days longer to as much as 2-3 months longer than standard. Okay. There's a reason for why inventory will stay longer. Most of the time, it's pricing. A seller thinks that their property is worth $500 when the current market really dictates $300,000.
Okay.
So either shut up and price it at $300K and get out, or hold on to it longer
and hope that
and put it on as a rental market.
Yeah.
Because right now it's more profitable to put your property up as a rental versus trying to sell it. So if you don't have to sell, don't sell. If you're able to rent it out, that's the better move to do.
Right.
If you're an investor, fantastic time to buy. Buy something dirt cheap, put it on a rental market, and you will 100% find renters to take it because we have about a 1% vacancy rate in all of New York City. That's insane.
That's very insane. So I'll refer back to what I was saying. So I heard inventory, what you just confirmed, there's a lot of inventory all over the city.
For
buying. So you don't really see rent in the city decreasing much. It's probably just going to keep going a little bit.
It'll continue to go up as far as rental is going to continue to go up.
Right.
And it seems like it's counterintuitive, but it really isn't. So when there is, why is the for sale inventory is increasing, right? If it was going off the market like hotcakes, that means the potential buyers are buying and they're moving in and they're becoming owners, right? But that's not what's happening. They are staying renters for longer periods of time, right? And so if there's more renters on the market, that means there's less inventory to potentially rent, and therefore driving rental prices up while driving for sale prices down.
I see what you're saying.
If the buyers jump onto the market faster, so a property gets listed and they start buying up these properties and inventory begins to reduce, then yeah, you'll start seeing a drop in rental prices because there's less people looking for a rental and more of them are buying.
Right. I just want to put something in perspective for you guys. Especially as Mike said, this is more notable like in communities like the Russian community, in Brooklyn or whatever. A lot of you will gladly pay $500-600 a month for a Lexus or a Mercedes or whatever. But when it comes time to pay an agent, not so much for renting an apartment. I can see how maybe you can get away with that on your own, even though maybe Mike wouldn't recommend it for certain reasons. It could be a process that an agent would still be very useful in, and I can say that from experience that it probably would be, because it's a bitch to find a good apartment in
Right.
Brooklyn. It really is. But as far as going through an agent versus just doing it yourself, always remember this. If you're willing to pay $6,000-7,000 for a fucking car, you might as well go through somebody who actually has been through all the headaches before that can help you to absorb them rather than trying to do some shit yourself. Because at the end of the day, and I think this is very important to note, most people think they know, but they truly don't know what they don't know, and that fucks them.
Exactly. There's two things that the mind does for you, right? So first of all, when you make a mistake, your mind, since you are your biggest advocate, your mind is going to tell you, maybe you fucked up, but that's okay. And you're going to find as many excuses as you need to make yourself feel okay about it.
Correct.
And even if you've lost $10,000 on the deal, or could have saved $5,000 here or there because you knew the right person, or you said the right thing, or you used the right comp, your mind is still going to tell you, that's okay. You did it by yourself. Good job. Pat on the back. Versus using an agent where all this was done for you. You already had this, a good agent, because not everybody can give you those savings that I'm talking about. The second thing here is, remember, when you're approaching a buyer, 99% of the time they're represented by a listing agent, so a seller's agent. So if you are working directly with the seller's agent, that is the same thing as working with your future ex-wife's attorney.
That was quite
Would you use your ex-wife's attorney to represent you?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And here's what's so messed up. Every time we allow a transaction to happen without proper buyer side representation, you are enforcing all the schemes that are happening, in particular in Brooklyn, some in Queens, and it's not just the Russian community, different communities, dirty agents play the same kind of game. Just 2 weeks ago, I got a referral from a buyer who wanted to use me as a buyer's agent. The whole situation played out as follows. She showed up to an apartment to view it. She scheduled the appointment, and she thought she was going there on her own. She thought she was speaking to the listing agent. This brokerage happened to have been a Russian-owned brokerage playing the same game. Politely, very nicely made her believe that the person she was talking to was the listing agent. In fact, when I told her, hey, give me the phone number of the person you spoke to, I'll call them.
Can you very briefly, because there may be a lot of people watching this, or anybody watching this, that doesn't quite know the difference between buying agent, selling agent, and listing agent?
Yeah.
Just really briefly.
So in a nutshell, a seller's agent, their literal responsibilities to the seller. They legally represent the seller. A buyer's agent represents the buyer and their best interest. Legally, our fiduciary responsibility, if I'm a buyer's agent, to the buyer. Fiduciary responsibility of a seller's agent to the seller. New York right now, and even the country, they're trying to do away with something called dual agency, which is where a single brokerage is representing both sides, right?
So what do you think of that?
I think that's fine because, I think it's good to do away with that. Because let's say you and I are part of the same brokerage, right?
Yeah.
I have a listing, I'm representing the seller. You're gonna be representing a buyer. The buyer, you bring the buyer. You're telling the buyer, hey, listen, this happens to be from the same brokerage, but what's gonna happen is I'm gonna represent you and, let me rephrase this.
It's okay.
Because I described it wrong. So dual agency, let's do this example. I'm representing the seller and a buyer comes into the open house directly and it says, I'm not represented by anybody, I want to buy this property. I can't necessarily negotiate with this person if they want representation, right? So they have to go and find somebody. Or I can say, you know what, since you don't want representation, I can give you, we can establish a dual agency and it'll just be somebody from within my brokerage.
Okay.
And so it gets a person gets assigned to them. Right?
Ah, okay.
And so now you and I work together in the same brokerage. I'm pitching, I say, you're going to be working with this buyer. Hi, nice to meet you. Do you think that you and I aren't going to be talking to one another?
I mean, 100%.
Hey, tell me what's the max your buyer's going to go to? You know what I mean? And you're going to tell me. So can you 100% trust that there's going to be, the fiduciary responsibility is going to be the way that it's supposed to be?
Definitely not.
Again,
I mean, I don't want to say definitely, but there's a good chance.
There is a chance that it won't, and that's a chance that if you're buying something expensive, and for many people that is the single largest purchase of their life.
Correct.
Why would you take the chance,
Yeah.
right? And so I think there is a strong benefit in eliminating dual agencies because it just allows for straightforward transparency to occur. You're a buyer, you want to be represented by somebody you trust,
Yeah.
and we encourage you to do that. Whether it's an attorney that represents you or a real estate agent, because in New York an attorney can represent you, and that's fine. But you have to keep in mind, what does an attorney do every day? Not the day-to-day grind of writing up comps, negotiating. They don't do any of that. They really just look at contracts, they look at offering plans, they look at board packages. That's their job.
They read fine print.
Exactly. It's important, it's good to have a good one.
Very good.
I had a deal that fell apart because literally her attorney, she didn't want to use the guy I was recommended, her attorney took an extra week to do the paperwork, which should have been done within 5 days, and the seller passed away.
That fucks so much. I can imagine that fucks a lot.
The seller passed away.
The nerve of that seller. Unbelievable nerve. I'm sorry. R.I.P. That's terrible.
If, in theory, if the buyer's attorney turned the paperwork around within the timeline that's standard,
There would have been no issue.
we would have been in contract, and then
So what happens in a situation like that?
If he had a legal person, maybe we can go through the deal. But he didn't have anybody that directly spoke to the property, and so at that point, it still is in this unknown land. We had a contract out, but it was never executed, and so in that case, the deal is dead. All because, in my opinion, the attorney took longer than they needed to, than they should
fucked up
have.
money for a lot of people.
It wasn't such a huge deal, but yes, they fucked up an opportunity for that seller to make their literally last financial statement that would have gone to whatever family they have left, right? And as well as for my buyer who was so excited about her possible new home.
Yeah.
You know? And my job in those moments is to push as hard as I can to make sure that the person wins. Like, I see it as a battle, right? It's a fun, energetic environment, but it is a war. You are going in, sometimes there's bidding wars, sometimes you're just negotiating and fighting for what you can, this is worth this is worth that. It's being strategic about how you're going to present that negotiating. And then you finally get a contract and you need an attorney who's going to be responsive.
Let me ask you a question. Doing this now versus anything else you've ever done before, being in real estate and the sort of sales job you have, do you ever see there being a point in time where you change careers and do anything else? Do you have aspirations to do anything else?
That's a great question. I think I would. I'm very practical. So
right, and that's important, especially when you have a family.
Exactly. So it goes back to that whole safety net, right? So if I see that I'm putting in X hours and I'm not getting the type of results I want, I might switch gears and do some kind of other sales that maybe has a set paycheck plus bonus commission, exactly, commission opportunity. And so that might be the next direction I would take. I could probably see myself much later on in life maybe going back to nonprofit work or finding a way to balance the two out.
I'm surprised.
Because I spent 10 years in nonprofits before real estate.
I'm surprised that you wouldn't be more. You didn't mention being more inclined to go into like investment properties or something to bring you a monthly income, or maybe you don't want that type of a headache. Or
I would very much love it. It's to me that's real estate, so it's not really leaving the industry, right?
It's a different type. You're being a landlord.
It's different, but I see myself doing both because the management part, right? So managing a property is different than owning a property.
Oh yeah.
You have a unit that, let's say it's a 10 unit building, fantastic. You could hire a management company and let them take care of it. You collect the payroll afterwards.
Yeah, you can build up the capital. If you can build up the capital to do that, that's great. It's just not so easy to do that.
It's not, but at the same time, it depends on where you start, right? You can go over to upstate New York, for example, and pick out rural towns that are really dirt cheap properties, and I mean dirt cheap by, it's all relative, but $150, $200, $250, right?
Yeah.
That you can then
That's
rent
dirt
out.
cheap for New York.
For New York, right? You can go to different places. Right now I have a buyer who's lending her sister some money. She's lending $100,000 and she's able to buy a 2-bedroom property. I think it's in Georgia, I want to say. But you buy a couple of those properties, and are you charging $1,300 rents? No, you're probably charging $500, $600 for a 1-bedroom, maybe even a 2-bedroom, depending on the price.
But it's almost like a bank account that gains a little bit of interest, and you still have it, and you still own it.
And when you have, let's say, 7, 10 of these properties, right? 100,000 each. That's at what is that? $1 million or so?
Yeah.
So instead of one property for $1 million, you have 10 of these properties. All of a sudden, those 500, 600 here and there begin to really give you a healthy income every month. And if you're able to have an extra 6,000 passive income, why the hell not? You can retire on that.
Anybody would say that, yes.
Even if you're getting 3,000 on a passive monthly income clearing, that's phenomenal, right? Because that gives you an opportunity to buy something else and not worry about what am I going to do if I don't, turn this around fast enough.
You get to buy your own time, essentially, at that point.
My biggest heads up for you, just because you mentioned you might consider flipping, I've seen people who have the connections, who have the business experience, fail at it.
And because they still suck, or?
It's very difficult.
At the Real Estate Wealth Expo, that seminar that my fiance and I went to, it's not that they were making it out to be so simple to flip houses. They were making it a very doable thing. And again, if you didn't see the video that I posted, so it was a $70 ticket to get into this thing, but once you get in, they're gonna, for every single seminar you go through, they're gonna sell you a $600 to $1,000 gimmick.
Right, they gotta upsell you.
They gotta upsell you, and we didn't take any of that because we realized even if we bought one gimmick, there's a good chance that within that one gimmick, if you took that class, they'd upsell you again.
Of course.
And we didn't really want to just shell out thousands of dollars like that. It's not a great thing to do. Anyway, point is, they made it sound very doable to flip houses. How could it easily get fucked up to do this?
Simple. You bought a property. A lot of them say, I went to an auction and got this dirt cheap. You, schmuck off the street, went, showed up at an auction, bought it. You didn't check the liens. All of a sudden, you bought the property, there is another $1 million in tax liens on it.
So that means that once you buy that property, you absorb the debt.
You absorb whatever liens are against that property. So if there is a contractor lien or a plumbing, some kind of renovation lien that didn't get paid out from the previous owners, you're the one responsible. You now hold a deed to this property and have liens associated to it, right? Sure, that's a rookie mistake, and now everybody says, well, I'll just double check that. No, that's not that simple.
There's way more to the process, I'm sure.
It's just this and that. Okay, so now let's say you double check the liens, you got a clean deed, you went in, everything is great, you moved in. The person you used to appraise didn't appraise the property, excuse me, not appraise, but to double check to see what's going on.
The GC didn't do his job properly for whatever reason.
All of a sudden, that kitchen that you thought was just going to be a quick $5,000 repair work, you broke into the wall and now the plumbing is complete shit. Or the electrical is fried.
Yeah, it's 15, 20 grand or something like that.
And you were only thinking about clearing maybe $20,000 on this. Now all of a sudden you're thinking, I'll be lucky if I can leave with just breaking even. And if you're a starting out investor and this is your first large chunk of money you're putting in, you can be out of the game before you even really played.
So what I have learned, and what I have learned as far as trying to flip things and this and that, because you'll see all these guys on the internet. I'll reference Gary Vaynerchuk. I know a lot of you have seen me reference him before, but it's because he's one of the more prevalent guys to give a shtick on this. It's not that it's impossible. It's very possible. However, you really have to know your market. For example, I am part of a couponing group, and they gave great deals on air fryers and fucking torches to make creme brulees with. I saw it as a discount because they told me it was a discount. I got to learn that the majority of times online, retailer or e-commercers or whatever, retailers will mark things up just to bring them down. So even if, I mean, I knew that before, I was just hopeful that that wasn't really the case. So even if you think you're getting a deal on a house,
You're still getting screwed.
you're probably still getting screwed. So just always assume. So if you're gonna, our intention, I think, if we're gonna flip, I would double check with a number of people in the real estate world, you included probably, on like the quality of the flip or whatever. I would also look for a flip with the most amount of profit possible, because you have to assume that every little thing will go wrong and that you want to give yourself some room to profit. Because say for example, you assume based on comps and like comparable prices in the neighborhood that you can make, I don't know, 50 to 100,000 on a house. Maybe in Jersey that's possible.
Look, I got a guy who's experienced on this. He's looking to clear about 25,000, and this is a guy who has his own contracting firm, who has been doing this for years.
And what frame of time?
And this is within about 6 months, from purchase to renovation to sell. That's his time frame, to make 20,000, 25,000 or so.
So I'm guessing he has a number of the things going on at the same time.
He has a couple of them, but it's not like he has a lot of these, right? He has a different business. But the point I'm making is, this is an experienced person who flips, and he's only making about 25,000. So the point of those seminars that you attend, and people hear about or will pay online sessions to attend, it's to make it seem like everything is so simple.
It's definitely not.
But there is a reason why there is an industry, and there's a law that says you should be licensed to give real estate advice, right? Or to participate in a real estate transaction. There's a reason for that. So it takes a significant amount of experience, training, knowledge of the law to go into it and think, I can clear 50K on a property. 50K would be ambitious. 20,000 I think is more realistic. 10,000 is even, more of like what you should think about. And so if you now work with those numbers, 10 to 20,000 on a flip that you clear, how much of your time and energy, what price do you put on that? You put in a significant risk on buying something, let's just say if you're buying in the New York area, tri-state area even, for 250K. I would think that's like as cheap as you could probably get without buying a complete shithole. 250K, that's no joke. You'll probably have to take out a mortgage on that.
Yeah.
You take out a mortgage on it, then you need another maybe 20,000 in renovations being conservative, right? With nothing going wrong. Then you need to sell this property. Are you going to sell it on your own, or are you going to use an agent? If you're using an agent, you can anticipate anywhere between 1 to 3% that you'll have to pay this agent, right? Or to pay the co-broking situation. So now, how much of your 20,000 have you really secured?
And that gets taxed, I would imagine.
And of course, and there is capital gains tax, right?
Which
so,
I don't know. I'm like,
again,
how
depends
much
on
is
where
that?
you're selling it. It could be, I think it's like 1.8 or something like that on the flip tax, something to that extent. So either way, you could be coming out of it with nothing. And if it is just 10,000 that you came out of it, but it took you 6 months to make that 10,000, could have you just worked overtime?
So I was just gonna say. So normally the reason that people flip things is because they don't want the boss, they don't want the job or whatever. Obviously, most of you realize this. If it was that easy, everybody would be doing it. I think the reason. So from my perspective, there's two reasons people flip. People flip is I guess some people just love flipping houses. It's very possible.
Love it, they understand it, they know how to do it, they have enough capital to jump in and do this on multiple properties at once.
Yeah.
You have 5-6 properties going, fantastic. But if you're the type of investor starting out and you only got one, it's incredible. In my opinion, it is a mistake to jump in and say, I'm going to start flipping on a low-level investor, right? Like your basic level investor. I think it's better to jump in and say, let me buy, let's say, what I can afford, a studio. And let me do a little renovation, rent it out right now because it's a hot renter's market, and then let's see what happens in 2 years from now, and sell it and make maybe 10,000 on it or 20,000 on it on the sell price.
Yeah.
Get that and go into another larger property. Or whatever money you put in, that equity that you have in the property, use that equity to buy your next property, which maybe is another studio, or maybe a 2-bedroom this time. Or you decide to buy, you know what, I'm going to really leverage this, and I got a couple of partners, and we're going to buy a 4-story building that has 8 units, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to head and rent those units out now. When talking about the example I gave before is you wouldn't use your future ex-wife's attorney to represent you. And I had a situation where the client, a buyer who wanted me to represent them, showed up to a showing under the impression that the agent who she was speaking to was the listing agent, but in fact they were the buyer's agent.
Okay.
And so when I started making the phone call saying this is my client, they literally were pushing me out of the equation. The listing agent, as well as this who works for the same brokerage, who was claiming to represent her, my client, she openly said and emailed them and said, officially, Mike Rockman represents me, no one else. They said quite bluntly to her, if you want this apartment, you have to use our agent.
Wow.
Exactly. So now, as a buyer, if it was me, I would just walk away, because if they're willing to play this type of game
Yeah.
and force me to use someone I don't trust, because I trust the other guy, right? What else are they not telling me? And that's what blows my mind. So many people buy a property
Yeah.
because in this situation they were pretty blunt and said you have to use us or you're not getting the deal. It's kind of a negative reinforcer. But other people, you don't catch on, or rather they say, well, if you use our agent, it'll benefit, well, you'll save some money. So they play it that way. But the message is the same. You're still getting played. We're using our internal people to negotiate both ends. Guess who's getting the win? The listing agent and their company.
You know, I'll tell you the truth. From an outside perspective, like me, someone who doesn't really know much about the industry, I've never really been in real estate before. Maybe my fiance would, maybe my better half would have seen it, but I don't know if I would have realized that would have been some like any sort of red flag. So this is good, guys, because someone like me, I would have been like, oh, all right, cool, yeah, sure. And like
I get to save some money. Sure, that sounds great.
Yeah, I'm like, listen.
And you think to yourself, because the explanation makes sense. The seller has to pay a higher price if we have to do it with an outside agent. But now everything's in-house, and everything in-house saves money. But guess what? They're still charging the seller whatever the co-broke fee was. So in a standard Manhattan prices, it's 5% and 6%. So 6% on a co-broke, meaning 2 agents are involved.
Right.
Whether it's from different companies or the same companies.
Thanks for clarifying that.
They're getting 6%.
Yeah.
The seller's paying 6%. 5% if it's a direct deal. Right. So if you came in, you're not represented by anybody, and that's it. Right. So in that case, yes, you're saving them money. But if you're coming in and they're still setting you up with a buyer's agent, and in some cases they make it known, in other cases they don't even make it known, just you're literally signing papers, and because this is your first time or even your second time, you don't know what you're signing.
I would have had no fucking clue.
This is just for who's representing who, and that's it. Or they won't even say it, just this is the next thing to sign, because you're signing paper after paper after paper. The sellers, please use people you trust, not just your best friend who recently became an agent. People you can trust and know what they're doing.
Well, the problem then is, Mike, it's not such a problem, I use another word. The challenge is then, how do you know who you can trust?
By getting the information that I'm giving you right now. The seller's side, who is being told, by the way, this person is a co-broke, so I have to charge you the 6% because it's a co-broke. Meanwhile, they told the buyer, you're coming direct, you're saving the buyer money, the seller money, and everything's good.
He just touched me, it was sexy.
And it was very nice. But this is the type of things we do to bring you at ease and sell you. That's our job. But if I'm a buyer's agent and you're my buyer, you're my client, you're my legal responsibility, if down the line you found out that I misrepresented something, you can take me to court and win your money back. If I undersold or oversold or lied about something bluntly, like that is the whole point of the law.
You know why I love, like in particular this podcast? I love the other one that I did too with my friend Gabrielle, who I'm gonna post in a few days. I love this one just as much because we're getting fantastic value here. Like really great value because, again, I'm a computer programmer, I do websites and stuff.
Right.
And I have one job. I don't know much about this industry besides what I'll learn at gimmicky fucking real estate conventions and what I can watch on YouTube, which the reality of what you watch on YouTube is you have to watch so many different things on YouTube to really get an idea of who's full of shit and who's not, and that's so time consuming. And you could look at this the same way, but I'm telling you that like there's just no reason to lie.
There's tremendous value in using an agent that you can trust and who appears to know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
In those cases, you will most likely save at least, at minimum, from my experience as buyers who I've worked with, sellers who I've worked with. Well, let me focus on buyers. Buyers who I've worked with, minimums of saving $5,000. And that's just me referring to them to the right lawyer, me referring the right lender. Those two elements save a person at least $5,000 right off the bat. Okay, never mind if you're using a general contractor who I can connect you with, and because I'm all like ordering bulk, right? Because I'm sending them a lot of business, they're able to give discounts. It's the same thing for renters who are using renter insurance. I have a guy who I can connect you with. He'll give you a cheap rate because I'm bringing him a significant amount of business. It's all about who you know and what they're willing to do for you. That's the one benefit the agent brings. Another is the pure information, right? So if you're in a situation to try to negotiate down a property, but you're not using the right comps, the market
comparisons,
market comparisons, you're not using the right ones, or you're not portraying the information in the way that the seller or the seller's agent needs to receive this information by, then it's a lost cause.
Right.
I was able to recently knock off $10,000 on a sponsor unit. In a sponsor unit, usually the seller is able to transfer all the seller costs to the buyer.
I'm gonna pause you. What is this? You said a sponsor unit?
It's a sponsor unit.
What does that mean?
A condo. It could be a sponsor unit, a condo, or a co-op. In a nutshell, they're the original owner. So usually they bought it really cheap, or if it's a co-op, they were owners before it converted into a co-op, or after it was just recently renovated, like the buyout process. Ultimately, if it's in a co-op situation, the biggest advantage is you usually don't have to go through a co-op board interview or the whole package, things like that. You don't have to go through it.
Right.
You just put together the basic package, and if the numbers are good, you go. In a condo situation, it's a little bit different, but the biggest downside in a condo situation for the buyer is usually the sponsor closing fees, the seller's closing fees could be transferred to the buyer. That's in a condo, it's an extra $20,000 to $30,000 that all of a sudden you have to absorb as a buyer.
Wow.
It's insane.
That's a lot. Yeah.
The benefit usually is because the sponsor purchased it at such a low price, they're able to sell it for a little below market. So you're getting value, but is it $20,000 value?
No.
You don't know, but having an agent that understands what they're doing and is not just talking a game, but actually showing you comps, bringing you to other properties, and proving to you why something is worth when something else isn't worth that, that's where you recognize this value. You know, people can typically spot a bullshitter. And you typically don't interact with that person. You politely ignore them, ghost them, right?
So I'll make one point right now. I think the best way to determine if a salesman is really, really good is if he's physically educating you on things along the way.
Yeah.
I think that's the easiest way. If he's not just spitting some game or whatever, if he's like, listen, I'm going to show you paperwork or whatever tangible evidence there is of what's going on, and this is buying a car, this is buying a house, doesn't really make a difference. If they're educating you more than they're trying to sell you, because the reality is no one likes to be sold, but everybody does like to buy. Right. So if you could do that, you're golden. So I'm like, given the fact that we've had this entire conversation, in 5 quick sentences, can you give me step by step on how you would tell somebody to buy a house?
First, connect with a real estate agent. Me.
Mike Rockman.
Mike Rockman. Links and profiles below, or whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna give them all the plugs in the world.
But sincerely, that is your first step. Whether you end up using a buyer's agent or a seller's agent, that's for you to decide down the line, but connect and see what the process looks like, what you're gonna gain from that agent, from who what's the brokerage behind this agent. Because again, when you have a company like Compass, for example, we have an insane amount of programs that help buyers and sellers potentially buy for less or sell for more.
Right.
The second step would be to go through your financials, get a pre-approval. Do not hit the streets and start looking for things thinking, I make enough money, I have great credit, I can buy no matter what.
Yeah.
You probably won't. You'll run into problems. So go get a pre-approval, go through the financial
Who would
process.
you get a pre-approval from?
So, I mean, I don't want to throw out a single name, but I'll say this. I'll say that if you're looking to buy a co-op in New York, it is better to use a local bank, like a Citizen Bank, or a local mortgage broker
Okay.
who's aware of the process, versus even a Wells Fargo with a national bank, or a Chase or something like that. Usually the rates are going to be almost the same or extremely competitive on across the board.
Right.
But the underwriter is what's key. The underwriter who is doing underwriting for upstate New York
Right.
knows very little, believe it or not, about co-ops in Manhattan or co-ops in Brooklyn and what all those numbers look like, or an offering plan for a co-op in Brooklyn.
I would imagine it's a different market.
It's a different world, it's a different level of paperwork and what the hell is what, and appraising it and so forth, underwriting a loan for this. But if you're able to use a local one, that's where you win.
So that was the second step, is get your pre-approval. He just gave you the information, the best ways to do it. You don't have to say 5 steps, but like step by step. So what will be the next step?
After the pre-approval process, let's say you're working with the agent, go start identifying properties that make sense. If there is, part of the pre-approval process is also filling out a revenue financial form, and that helps you really focus in on what to do. And after you've identified the properties, or during that time as you're narrowing it down, secure a solid attorney. An attorney, as we already said, who's responsive, who will be responsive to you because their legal responsibilities to you, and also collaborate with your buyer's agent if you're using one, because you are the general and your team has to be responsive to you.
I feel like you might be able to refer a good attorney.
100%. I actually happen to work with an attorney who was voted #1 in the city for many years running, and he charges phenomenal prices. The level of professionalism should be worth at $2,500. He's charging your Brooklyn rates of $1,200 to $1,500.
So not just hyping a guy up. The proof is in the pudding. He's been rated apparently,
Yeah.
which is mazel.
Exactly. And and as you identified a property, you have your team lined up. That's when you start begin to putting in offers. The offering part is submitting those offers is extremely important. You really have to understand the psychology behind it. And that's why it's also great to have a middleman, meaning a buyer's agent to use, because you're not as emotionally committed to this property. You have the buyer's agent who will help you feedback this information. Because if a seller comes back to you and says, I have 3 other offers coming in, and this, so either go full ask or go above ask.
Right.
Your emotions are going to run high. You're most likely going to believe it. But me being somewhat neutral, and again responsible to the buyer, I'm not going to just convince you and say we have to go up. I'm going to call the seller out on his shit and say, hey, I spoke to you yesterday. You didn't say a single thing about a buyer, about other buyers. Or when we were at the open house 3 days ago, I asked you, how's it looking? I'm going to call him out on different things. Or begin to, again, depending on the relationship that I'm able to establish, there's things that I can leverage out of agent relationships to get you a better deal. Once you have an accepted offer, a contract gets sent out, start having the attorney do their due diligence on it. If you want to go ahead and hire your own inspector to look at it, fine. You don't need to these days for a co-op or a condo. Usually everything is okay. You don't need to spend the extra $500. Or on the flip side, it's just $500. Go ahead and do it just to cover your bases.
Sure, yeah.
After that, you're in contract. Just keep in mind, in order, when you're signing the contract, to enter a contract, you need to have 10% ready as a good faith deposit.
This is
to put down.
considered a closing cost?
No, this is just to enter the contract.
Ah, okay.
So at any point you could still potentially fail out of it, but it's a good faith deposit you're putting down to show the seller you're interested and to bind yourself to the deal. So you put your 10% down,
Yeah.
and you're in contract. And once you're in contract, A lot of if you're taking out a loan, that's where the underwriting kicks in. And so there's an appraiser that has to come in from the bank. There is...
Can you briefly explain what underwriting is for those of us retards in the room?
Honestly, you don't need to even be aware of it. It's really for the bank to handle, right? And so the underwriter is from the bank, right? They come in and they want to make sure that a proper appraisal is given. And if the property is appraising above what you're buying, then congratulations, your agent did a great job.
Yeah.
My last deal right now, I have a contract out, we got appraised for higher than what my buyer is paying, about $25,000 appraised higher, which is great. That means if she technically puts it on the market today, it's worth $25,000 more than what she bought, right? But that also goes to show just what you think is worth doesn't mean people are willing to pay that price. So this is where you really, as a seller, need to understand, yes, your comps are there, but what is the reality on the ground? And that's where a solid seller's agent comes in and tells you, I'm happy to list it at phenomenal price that you think, but is the consumer mentality that they're gonna pay? iPhone thing for $1,000, people, the cell phone companies realized they're not paying this price. They started rolling out other models to sell for less.
So one thing that I just want to get into real quick, because I think this is really important to note. Anybody in the business world, for the amount of times I've dealt in web design and seen brands and logos get created and people start to debate if their logos are good or not. To be honest with you, you can have an expensive fucking designer or the best person on what they do, and you can have the highest quality logo for exactly what you asked for. But the reality is, it might be shit. And the reason why is simply because you don't get to decide if your product is good or not. The market does.
Exactly.
The market decides that.
Exactly.
So it's like if you pay $50,000 for a logo or a house in a state where property is very, very cheap.
Right.
Anybody can tell you anything they want, but the market will tell you what they're willing to pay.
Right. Exactly. The market would dictate what's happening.
Yeah.
So moving forward. So now you.
What step are we on?
Underwriting happened. I mean, we're at
4 maybe?
4, very broad 4. This is like step 15, but.
Okay.
If this is a co-op, you are then gathering your co-op, your board package. Your board package, don't do this by yourself. Just don't.
Board package? What does that mean exactly?
So a co-op board, if it's a Park Avenue board, be ready to be like violated. They will ask detail.
I felt uncomfortable as he said that.
Detail after detail. I had a buyer had to put out. I mean, the man is a wealthy man, a great company, a great person. Yeah. And like you Google him, he pops up. Like this is no joke, solid guy.
Yeah.
And they wanted, get this. Initially, they wanted 3 years going back of his tax returns for personal and business. 3 years going back.
Why 3 years? Did he have bad credit or something?
No, phenomenal credit. Just because that's what they wanted. That's part of their standard board package. Okay.
That's interesting.
And they wanted 5 months going back of all of his financial institutions. So savings, checkings, investing, stocks. 5 months going back.
Someone on that board definitely got anally fucking financially raped at some point in time. There's no way.
This is just the bureaucracy of certain boards. Obviously, a Park Avenue one will want to dig deeper. A Brooklyn one will probably dig less, but they'll still dig, and so you have to be ready to put that out. So if you're the type of guy or girl or family that says, yeah, we make 200K, on cash, but on paper you're writing off everything left and right and technically only showing 50,000 each or 100,000 altogether.
Things get a lot more complicated.
Then you're not really qualified for that $1 million house for a co-op at least. So after your board is completed and the board gives you'll have a board interview, you go through all that. That's completed. If it's a condo, you avoid all those things right away. Yeah. You just get your loan approved and that's it. If it's a cash deal, fantastic. You're pretty much running to the finish line after the attorneys do their due diligence. Right. Okay. Which is just making sure you're actually buying a legal entity that it belongs to the seller. Okay. For the most part, you show up at closing, you sign. That's where the agents get paid. Mind you, we don't get paid until that moment.
So if this deal took 6 months to close and I'm walking away with $20,000 on it, great. Doesn't mean I'm a wealthy man. That could have been my only deal for that year, but that's the only moment I'm getting paid.
Yeah, that's the could be one of the
That's
downfalls.
dangerous. That's dangerous.
It could be because that like
A lot of agents leave the industry because of that stress. It's just like, I don't know what the hell's gonna happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
But after all that is completed, you sign, you're happy, everybody's great, and you part ways. You shake hands and you go on. As far as the buyers and the sellers go, everybody moves their separate ways.
Gotcha.
And that's it. And you hope that you bought a good property and it doesn't start leaking on you tomorrow.
Well, Mike, I think you've given us a ton of value on what it's like to really work in the real estate world. What it's like to work in the real estate world as a new father.
Yeah, man.
That's got to be
It's
ridiculous.
wild ride.
Wild ride, crazy roller coaster. What it's like. We've covered so much, from flipping houses to investment properties to buying a house, and this is all kind of more towards the tri-state of like New York City, Jersey, I would imagine. Maybe Pennsylvania.
You can use the same knowledge anywhere you go.
Yeah.
If you just adjust the numbers for yourself, but the risks are the same.
Yeah. So I think that a ton of value has been provided here. I want to thank you so much for coming on the Big Critique.
Of course.
And talking about this. I hope that you guys have gotten as much value from this as I have, because I've learned so much today. Once again, this is my buddy Michael Rockman. He just got a job. Where'd you get a job, Mike?
I just switched brokerages to Compass.
Okay.
Compass, New York.
I don't know why I was waiting for you to say more. Whatever. All right, he just got a job at Compass. In Compass, New York. And so I'm gonna give you all the plugs to him in the comments, where you would normally find them. Guys, if you found value in this interview, I have more coming like this. Hit that subscribe button. Give me a like. Give me a dislike if you feel necessary.
Subscribe. Give him feedback.
Show us comments. In those comments, I would love to see you ask Mike another question. He will be on the thread 100%, answering questions.
100%. Whatever you have, whatever interests you, whatever you think you didn't get enough information of, post the comments. I'll be happy to reply. Or if you want us to make more detailed videos on certain subjects, let us know. I'll be coming out with a channel shortly in the coming months through Compass and myself, and so look out for those as well.
Mike, once again, man, thanks so much. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.
All the best.